In today's news, gambling has been legalized in the British Virgin Islands and Raekwon Roberts is being honored.
Government decides to halt self-quarantine for nationals returning home. All this and so much more when 284 News returns.
There's a reason you get up on a morning. A reason you pick yourself up, start the day. Maybe it's sheer grit. Maybe it's your ethics. Maybe it's because you know people like you are waiting. For people just like you. We all have our reasons, and for Republic Bank, that reason is you. Every little thing, every big thing. It's all about making a difference in your life. Because after 182 years, if it's one thing we're sure about, is that the difference is you. We're here to help.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Viewers, welcome. It is Friday, June 19th, 2020. I am Kyla Kenesha Ford.
And my name is Javon Wilson. Welcome to another great edition of 284 News. Now, viewers, we're so happy to start today's newscast as we remember the life and beautiful legacy of a young man we've all grown to love and know, and of course will be remembered for a very long time, Mr. Raekwon Roberts, who tragically lost his life. Now his mom now giving back to honor his life and again the amazing legacy that he left behind. Now last Friday, his mom, Mrs. Marsha Whitley, presented a computer, a printer, and computer accessories to the children of the Rainbow Children's Home, as you can see on the screen. She said, quote, Raekwon was unable to complete his computer engineering and computer technology degree due to a tragic car accident that took his life on the 5th of August 2019. Now, in his short life, Raekwon touched the lives and warmed the hearts of many. He was a true blessing, a light in a world of darkness. Today, on his 23rd birthday, which was Friday, of course, we have united to let his light continue to shine by blessing someone else and to pay it forward by giving the children of the Rainbow's Children's Home a better opportunity to excel. The donors, of course, included his mom, Mrs. Marsha Whitley, Brianna Whitley, his sister, and Honorable Shari De Castro, his former teacher, and of course, a friend. Now, Kyla, what a beautiful way to honor Raekwon, a life that we have loved so much, and just simply pay it forward by giving back.
Most definitely. Definitely a beautiful story. Persons who were friends of Raekwon knew him as you said, a light, such a beautiful spirit, such a beautiful person to be around. And this is a great gesture, basically giving back to kids to now, as you said, pay forward a legacy, and for the children of the Rainbow Home to now have this opportunity that he did not have due to ending his life at such a young age.
Definitely, and we want to continue to send our blessings to the family and friends of the late Raekwon Roberts. Now, to head straight into our newscast for today, the gambling, which is the Gaming and Betting Virgin Control Act of 2020, which seeks to legalize gambling in the British Virgin Islands and provide for the regulation and control of gaming and betting and matters, has been passed in the House of Assembly. Now, this was finalized just last night and confirmed by the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew Foy, who said, quote, the Virgin Islands Gaming and Betting Control Act 2020 was successfully passed in the House of Assembly in the BVI without dissent. Major protection and benefits are in the act for our people of the Virgin Islands and the territory, end of quote. Now, viewers, as we know, for years, there has been a very heated debate as it relates to, should we legalize gambling in the British Virgin Islands? Well, it's no longer a debate with the requisite legislation now in place. Viewers, we caught up with the overseeing minister, Dr. the Honorable Natalia Whitley, who was very proud to share what this means for the BVI. Listening.
One of the most important aspects of the Gaming and Betting Control Act is the fact that it will now allow us to introduce pari-mutuel betting on the horse track. The horse track is very expensive for the people of the Virgin Islands, for the taxpayers. We pay well over $100,000, between $100,000 and $200,000 for leases on the horse track. And it still requires quite a lot of maintenance and quite a lot of money and effort to keep horse racing going. Now, studies have been done that show that for horse racing to be sustainable in the Virgin Islands, we need pari-mutuel betting. So that is an aspect of the Gaming and Betting Control Act that is very positive and will have a very positive impact on horse racing. In addition to that, it will allow us to upgrade our landside tourism activities. We know that some tourists enjoy having a nightlife, and it will allow us to build some properties that will allow a little bit more of a nightlife to flourish in the Virgin Islands, especially on places like Tortola. And that will allow places like my constituency in the 7th and also the 8th district to have a more meaningful participation in tourism in the Virgin Islands.
That was the Honorable Natalia Wheatley speaking to the new legislation. Now, the act states that the commission will be managed by a board appointed by the Minister of Finance. It specifies, quote, members of the Gambling Commission's board shall be appointed on such terms and conditions as the minister shall determine. Persons shall be qualified to be members of the board by reason of their work and experience in the gambling industry or fields related to law, finance, information technology, economics management, social work, or law enforcement. End of quote. Now, some have said that this bill coming into fruition is forward-thinking and will bring revenue into the government's coffers, especially at this very critical juncture where the BVI must embrace new revenue generators. But others, very specifically the Christian community, has denounced the move, saying that not only will this tarnish the fabric of our society, but it will detriment the middle and low the middle and low class people who are the prime consumers of this type of business. So Kyla, after I think years of debate, I shouldn't say weeks, coming to the forefront in the last few weeks, but now we see after quite a number of years of back and forth, should we legalize it? And in light of what's already happening in the local climate of gambling within the British Virgin Islands, illegal gambling, that is, the ministers are now taken to the forefront and saying it's time that we legalize it in the BVI.
Most definitely. I think the government, the Foy-led government, really prides itself on being unconventional.
Yes.
They continuously say this. And I think here's where we see this. We've had conversations about various bills they've been debated about, but here we see the government bringing them forward, although we have seen some opposition from, as you said, spiritual or advisors or churches or persons in general, but they have brought this bill forward and it is now passed in the House of Assembly. It's definitely different to say out loud that gambling is now legalized in the BVI.
Wow.
Is something we have definitely been talking about for years now, and it's and now it has come to fruition.
Absolutely. And I know I recall once we were at a press conference with the Premier, one of the questions we asked was, in light of what's happening and in light of the fact that the two main economic pillars are now somewhat very crippled by COVID-19, that's finance as well as tourism, what are some of the revenue generators? And he did mention that about 7 pieces of legislation are coming. We see marijuana being pushed as well, now the Gambling Act, and I'm sure, like the Premier said, we can look forward to a few of those. So hopefully this can help to stabilize the economy.
We'll see. Also coming out of the House of Assembly, this was today, the government of the Virgin Islands has announced its decision to put a stop to self-quarantine for locals and residents returning home because of the high incidence of persons who are violating the protocols. This was announced in the House of Assembly, as I said, by Honorable Carvin Malone, Minister of Health and Social Development. Under law, persons entering the territory must undergo a 14-day mandatory quarantine at a facility approved by the government. This is now before we know persons had an option to do it self-quarantine at home or in a government facility, but now we see where they're putting a halt to self-quarantining. The minister said, and I quote, "After the 15th, a decision is made that we would have no further, not seek to have any further home quarantine only because of the cause of severity and of the persons who have sought to violate this." Opposition leader Honorable Marlon Penn asked in the House the cost that government is incurring from the mandatory quarantine for both at-home and government-funded facilities. It was then the Minister Malone made this announcement. Minister Malone also stated that the government is prepared to pay for additional 100 rooms to accommodate this new decision. Government has contracted to have some 251 rooms and also a 24/7 security. This announcement came as reports have been made that persons are violating the orders under the 14-day quarantine upon their return by being out in the streets. Javon, these are rumors that we have been hearing surfacing, and here we see the government saying no longer. I think this is something that the government were a bit afraid about. And know that probably could happen, but here we see it, and it is a bit frightening.
It is frightening, and like you said, those rumors were very strong and constant, to the point where the premier himself denounced and said the rumors are false. But persons were complaining about, returnees being out and about at the beaches, at the various, most times crowded areas, which is a frightening reality, because the one thing we do not want to do is retard the efforts of the health officials and the government to not only slow the spread, but to ensure that we are now in a position where we can say we are COVID-free. And I'm glad that the minister, but Honorable Marlon Penn, leader of the opposition, mentioning the cost and questioning the cost that will be incurred by government. When we look across the region, some countries have adopted the measure where returnees have to pay for their own accommodation. And this cost is now being footed by the government of the Virgin Islands. And now they're saying only 100 more rooms will be accounted for. So then what happens when persons need to return after that money is depleted? So these are the questions we have to continue to ask. And a lot of persons have also said, is a 14-day quarantine necessary? Why not test them upon arrival? And those who may be infected, we look at quarantining those persons. But that's a tricky situation in itself as well.
Within itself, I think going back to the drawing board might be something that the government may have to do. I think this will be a long haul, a long process. And as you said, the cost that is incurred with this, we cannot overlook that.
Right.
And I think in general, persons, we're seeing where our economy is opening back up. New curfew order was just announced. Now curfew is at 12 o'clock. So the country is really opening back up and flexing. So we really don't want a situation where we go steps back.
Definitely. Run the risk of reinfection.
Most definitely. Viewers, still ahead. Parents are frustrated as schools remain closed, and Liquor License Act read in the House for the second and the third time. All this and so much more when 284 News returns.
Is business slow, cash flow down, hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media at cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, yesterday, during the night sitting of the second session of the 4th House of Assembly, the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew A. Foy, moved the motion for the Liquor License Act 2019 to be read for the second and the third time. Premier Foy explained that this legislation has been a long time coming. This legislation will allow for the licensing responsibility to be removed from under the magistrate court, and this licensing responsibility will now be given to a licensing board. The liquor licensing board will have the authority to grant license. Premier Foy admitted that this legislation was first championed by the representative of the 3rd Electoral District, Honorable Julian Fraser. Premier Foy, he explained Honorable Fraser's sentiments of why are we burdening the magistrate's court with this process. Premier said the truth of the matter is he was correct at that time, and even now the motion for the second reading and the third reading was seconded by Honorable Carvin Malone. As the bill was debated in the House, Honorable Shireen Flax had a bit to say about it. She spoke to how this bill would also assist businesses on the sister islands. She spoke to how persons would complain about the current process. Javon, she spoke when persons come from the sister islands, because this process was so long, sometimes persons would have to come back a second and a third time to just complete this process, meaning that they would have to pay ferry services 3 and 4 times just to complete this process. This bill also polices the serving of alcohol to minors. Honorable Shireen Flax spoke to her own experience of witnessing establishments serving alcohol to minors in the House. Honorable Flax said that it is important that after this bill is passed, that inspectors be put on the street to make sure that minors are not being served. And she said this will help in cutting down some of the social ills in our community. She spoke to the fact that even now, seeing persons at 8 a.m. in the morning at bars bears to their mouth, and this may be an effect of persons consuming alcohol at such a young age. So she's definitely hoping that this bill could cut down some of the social ills right here in our community. The bill is now in the committee stage to be reviewed, and amendments will be made if necessary.
I definitely think this will speed up the process, like Honorable Shireen said. And, you know, one of the things we do not really like to touch on is the issue of alcoholism within the young generation, like she mentioned. And the board will ensure that a lot of that is regulated and of course, speed up the process. So I'm very happy to see that we're doing what we need to do, especially, like she said, for the persons of these sister islands who are incurring additional costs just to facilitate a simple process.
Most definitely.
Viewers, we have to move right along as the territory thrives in a COVID-free environment, which has inspired the government to lift the limit of mass gatherings to 100 persons per 64 square feet. I'm sorry, 1 person per 64 square feet, among many other things. Parents are now strongly questioning why schools are yet to reopen. Now, several of them have taken to social media, with the most recent calling out the Minister of Education, accusing him of bias towards the Montessori school. The post addressed to the minister said, quote, Century House Montessori has been pleading with the Ministry of Education to reopen their doors. They have done all that is required. You, along with others in the ministry, and she's referring to the minister here, toured the school. They were given verbal confirmation, and then they left waiting for their certificate to officially reopen. After some pleading conversations with you by parents and myself, the school was allowed to open on Tuesday morning, but by midday was shut again by Environmental Health. It is alleged that Environmental Health said that they received instructions from the Ministry of Health to close the school and that they can't answer any questions. The issue is on a ministerial level. Minister, can you tell me about a tiny school opening its doors? How could that be on a ministerial level? End of quote, based on that post that was on social media just yesterday. Now, some very strong allegations, and so we saw it fit to reach out to the Minister of Education himself for clarifications, and this is what he had to say about the matter.
Many persons have been calling for a full reopening of schools, but Cabinet has listened to the advice of our health professionals who have advised that we do a phased reopening of schools, a slow, cautious approach to the reopening of schools, especially considering that we have the borders now open and persons are coming from places like the United States of America, the United Kingdom, the Dominican Republic, all who have a great deal of COVID-19 cases. So we have to be very cautious. Our health professionals have advised that we do a slow, cautious reopening. And the first phase of that was us allowing a small, limited number of students on campus based on very specific criteria. Students who are sitting standardized examinations, students who have special needs, like whether they might be autistic or they have some other physical or cognitive disability. We also have students who perhaps are having challenges with the internet, or they have a lack of a internet device, or students who need to come on campus to use some of the technical labs or automotive lab, for instance, which is something that will be hard to do online. So this has been our approach to schools. Some persons, of course, especially private schools, have had some difficulties there. Of course, the parents don't think that they should be paying for school, even though school is being done online and the content is being delivered. It's a challenge. But these challenges are not unique to people in the Virgin Islands. These are challenges existing all over the world. One of the hardest hit sectors in this COVID-19 era has been schools, and especially private schools. And we sympathize with the private schools. We sympathize with the daycare institutions. COVID-19 is pushing all of us to our limits, but we will go based on the health advice, and we will continue to meet as a cabinet and reevaluate all our decisions, and we will come up with something that we think is in the best interest of all the people of the Virgin Islands.
Now, viewers, following the territory-wide closure, many private school owners encountered financial difficulties and have since been calling for the reopening of schools. In acknowledgement, the minister earlier this month had said these institutions have employees in limbo and financial obligations to fulfill. Now, further to that, he seemed concerned about the vulnerability of the children and then added, quote, "While the advice of our health officials has recommended that they remain closed, we cannot ignore the cries of those who look after our more precious resource, our children," he said. Now we see here the minister stating that he will not reopen schools against the guidelines of cabinet and local health officials. Now, Kyla, this is a really touchy story because, you know, COVID-19 has shifted us in a completely different directions. And one of the industries really affected is education. You know, one of the sectors, affected is education. And the persons suffering the most are our children. You know, our parents are, yes, complaining, but it has been quite a transition for the children. And while some children are thriving under the current virtual system, it's pretty difficult for a lot of the kids to adapt to what's going on. But here we see the minister also saying, you know, the borders are reopened to our nationals, incoming nationals and residents. And we have to be very careful and managed in our approach to not retard that. But persons are rightfully also saying 100 persons allowed for mass gatherings. What about our children? And
Right.
I think that's a common consensus across the territory.
But as we continue to reopen, are officials really looking at ways, and I'm sure they are looking at ways that we can move forward in our education system, because we will continue to reopen. COVID-19 around the world is not going anywhere just as yet. So I think we have to find ways to live with COVID-19, and we've continued
Agreed.
to speak about this. And as you said, our students are really feeling the blunt of this decision. But also, too, I think parents are really frustrated where they're expected to be at work and be present at work, but then they are also now school assistants, teachers to their
lot.
kids. It's
It's
definitely a lot. And I think they want to hear more than just it's a ministerial decision. I think we really have to speak to our people like this is where we are and this is where we're going. And I think that's what people really want to hear from the government, from the Ministry of Education. And I think that's what they're pleading for.
Absolutely. And we also have to remember the mental health aspect. You know, we talk about as adults the mental impact COVID-19 has had on us. We have not for once stopped to think about the impact that that has had on our children. But this is a story we can go on
And on.
forever and ever, but we have to go to a quick commercial break, and we're coming back with more news.
Listen, you want to talk about?
You want top of power?
Join the prepaid party with CCT and enjoy more affordable data plans, more top-up promotions, more savings with hero bundles, and more value for your money each and every Tuesday with Top Up Turn Up Tuesday. Visit a CCT store today or anywhere CCT Top Up is sold and top up your phone.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. You want top of power?
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, the government of the Virgin Islands is seeking the services of a suitable locally based insurance company for the provision of insurance for the Ralph T. O'Neill Administration Complex. Interested tenderers can request the bidding documents electronically from Monday, June 15th by emailing requests to procurement@gov.vg. That is procurement@gov.vg with the subject title Request for Proposal Insurance for Ralph T. O'Neill Administration Complex. Tender documents must be received no later than 10 a.m. on Tuesday, July 7th, marked Requests for Proposal Insurance for Ralph T. O'Neill Administration Complex. This is really important because you do not want your email to be missed, and this email must be addressed to the Chairman, Central Tenderers Board, Ministry of Finance, Procurement Unit, Comar Trading Building, number 2, second floor board, Rotown, Tortola, VG 1110, British Virgin Islands. For more information, contact the procurement coordinator at 284-468-4243 or 468-5921 or email procurement@government.gov.vg.
All right, and viewers, we want to close things off. We're kind of running out of time, but we want to shed some light on the Black Lives protest that is happening this Saturday. That's actually tomorrow.
Yeah.
We want to invite all BV Islanders, residents. It matters not if you're local or not, once you reside within the beautiful shores of the British Virgin Islands. We are speaking to the cause of racism, something that I think has continued to plague not just the region, but across the world. But of course, the horrendous death of Mr. George Floyd, really shedding a lot of light on what's happening across the world, whether it's overt or systematic. Racism is real. And a group of intelligent, amazing young people have come together within the BVI to say, listen, this is our problem as well, you know, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And not just because it might exist a little bit within the British Virgin Islands and we are seeing some of the byproducts, but also because it is our responsibility as civil human beings to stand in solidarity for what's right. Because like one of the organizers rightfully said, I mean, today it might be, you know, their day, but tomorrow it could rightfully be ours. And it's so important that we continue to stand in solidarity, Kyla. So are you going to be there?
I will be there, and of course 284 Media will be on the ground to bring you live coverage of this protest. So important to stand in solidarity, as you said. Couldn't say it any better.
All right, viewers, so join us tomorrow, 2:30 p.m. sharp. We are leaving the Noah Lloyd Park, and we're heading to the Queen Elizabeth II Park, where we'll have a very deep diverse, inspiring, enlightening agenda. So we want to encourage persons to also tune into 284 Media for coverage, as well as show up and be a part of what's happening globally and being a part of that conversation as well. And it's amazing that all of this is happening on Juneteenth, which is actually today. And viewers, for those of you who do not know what Juneteenth is, that is a holiday that is celebrated today, June 19th, to commemorate the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. The holiday was first celebrated in Texas, where on that date in 1965, in the aftermath of the Civil War, slaves were declared free, under the terms of the 1862 Emancipation Proclamation. So this year, the celebration's even more monumental as we speak, as the fight continues against racism 55 years later. But viewers, we are not giving up. So please join us tomorrow at the Noah Lloyd Park. We are out of time for today, but be sure to follow us at 284media.com for daily updates, Facebook, 284media.com, and 284BVI on Instagram, as well as Twitter. My name is Javon Wilson.
And I am Kyla Kenesha Forbes. We will see you again tomorrow at the March, and of course next week as we deliver your daily dose of local, regional, and international content. 284 News, your source for honest and impartial news, right here on 284 Media. Have a happy Friday and a happy weekend, everybody.